With the fall of Trump following the assault on the Capitol, something quite interesting happened. Big Tech took the liberty of censoring a sitting U.S. president. This may be a key point revealing a new reality. Can Big Tech claim to be above the law and even above the president of the U.S.? This is not obvious because the examples of companies or bosses who have seen themselves above politics have not often been successful. The last one to experience this is probably Jack Ma, the billionaire boss of Alibaba and Ant, who simply disappeared after having pushed the criticism of the power in place for a little too long. Let's try and take a closer look at this. Come on, let's go. Whether you like Trump or not is not the subject here. Whether or not his freedom of expression has been violated is also not the point. In fact, what is shocking is that the decision to cut off the channels of communication of the President of the United States was not made by a court decision, but by a corporate decision. Until today, the rule has been that justice is done by the courts and not by a private enterprise. Ironically, President Trump issued a presidential decree on May 28, 2020 to prevent any online censorship by these same companies. Here is an excerpt from the rather premonitory text. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube wield immense, if not unprecedented, power to shape the interpretation of public events, to censor, delete, or disappear information, and to control what people see or do not see. Admit that it was still a good feeling on his part, even if obviously this decree will not be enough. Moreover, this affair went much further than a purge of Trump and his close supporters' Twitter and Facebook accounts. Google, Amazon, and Apple unilaterally decided to cut off access in all its forms to a social network called Parler on the pretext that all of the fascists in America were present on this social network. Here, it is not a question of censoring a word or a person, but a platform that by its very nature hosts a plurality of discourses. It's starting to look like China, which decides to censor whole sections of the internet that don't fit in with the official discourse. Except that there, in the USA, it is not the political power that acts, but a handful of overpowerful private companies. I agree, but it raises questions all the same. The most ironic thing about Twitter is that there is an undeniable link between Twitter's popularity and the fact that Trump chose this platform to express himself. Clearly, it's not gratitude that will stifle Twitter. Today, the question becomes the following. Will Big Tech suffer the onslaught of antitrust laws by the political power to reduce their claims to a more acceptable dimension? Or will the American power constitute Big Tech as a de facto fifth power? As a reminder, in a democratic country, what are called the three powers are a legislative branch, embodied by a parliament that writes the laws, an executive branch, embodied by a president that enforces the laws, and an independent judiciary, so that the laws apply to everyone equally. In the United States, the press is usually considered the fourth power because the press was once independent. But today this is no longer the case, since the press in the USA and in Europe belong essentially to a handful of billionaires who are very close to the government. In other words, the government does not especially fear the press. At most, it has the capacity to denounce the faults of certain isolated individuals. But in no way does it constitute a relay for contradictory political or economical thought. In short, we can say that the press is in complete collusion with the powers that be. The question I ask myself is this. Will Big Tech be constituted as the fifth power that will act as a righting of wrongs on the internet? In any case, it is not the Democrats who criticize Big Tech the most at the moment. It is nevertheless convenient for Joe Biden that his political opponent is censored without him having to make a single phone call. One can also wonder if the USA or Europe have the means to bring Big Tech in line if they wish to do so. For my part, the answer is yes. I know they are global companies. Facebook has 3.5 billion users, and Google handles the overwhelming majority of internet requests. Okay. However, what would these companies be like if they gave up the American market? Would their new base be China? I doubt it. Would Europe remain neutral in the face of American pressure? I doubt that also. No, in reality, when you take out the USA, Europe, and Asia, the world of Big Tech is not so big anymore. Beyond all the image and technical problems, I don't think that an independence from the ruling power is realistic. It seems to me it's much more efficient to want to associate with government in a soft mix of services rendered and favors requested. Moreover, it is a recipe that has worked very well so far. In fact, it is already the case. Google collaborates very well with the NSA, and the Facebook scandal around Cambridge Analytica during the Trump campaign shows very well that big tech are companies that know how to cooperate when it's in their interest. On the other hand, for the power in place, knowing that we control social networks without asking for it, it is a power to which it would be a pity to have to give up. However, there is one ingredient that could make you mess up this beautiful soufflé. Decentralized trust chain technologies, that is, any techno that relies on blockchain. I will talk about it more often on my channel soon, but it is important to understand that blockchain can allow an international cooperation at the level of each individual who does not agree with the central power of his respective country. It is quite a powerful tool. This is not a foregone conclusion because in the 1990s and 2000s, we had the same hope in computing with free software. I did a complete dissertation on free software in 2005, so I know the subject rather well as it was discussed at the time. Well, 15 years later, let's just say it, software hasn't changed the world as much as we might have hoped. Will the blockchain succeed in installing this famous global chain of trust? I hope so, but here too, it's going to be a tough battle. Let me give you an example. Today, what is in fashion is what we called tokenization. Basically, you take an asset, you create tokens on a blockchain, and you distribute the value of that asset with those tokens. It's very convenient. Potentially you don't have any fees and no human intervention is required to make contracts or buy titles. Personally, I think it's potentially great. At the same time, you have to be aware that this type of technology allows you to forego a lot of regulations that are very dear to the heart of government. Moreover, in terms of traceability, we are far from the comfort offered to governments by big tech. The anonymization of transaction is much easier. I am very curious to see to what extent the new blockchains will make it possible to impose a new decentralized, and therefore more democratic, system on representative democracies that objectively no longer represent a large part of the population. In any case, it is clear that technology will be at the heart of the performance of our financial portfolios. Today, big tech is very expensive if you look at their growth, but I remain very cautious about drawing the conclusion that they are too expensive. It all depends on where the world is going. Whether in the service of governments or in the service of the people, this is where things move the most. So yes, I remain cautious about big tech because they are few in number and therefore the risk is high. I know that Apple wants to impose itself on the manufacture of semiconductors and perhaps even in the automotive industry, which takes us far away from smartphones. But this means, above all, that the intrinsic risk of the company is very high, both upward and downward. That's why I prefer to have well thought out ETFs that allow us to buy the sector without overweighting this or that company. On that note, see you soon for new videos. Ciao!
Thank you so much for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the bell if you want to be notified of the next episode. And if you want to invest in the stock market over the long term or diversify your financial portfolio, I'm offering you an analysis of the 8 European star stocks to have. Thanks again for watching and have a great day.